When your days become one and the same, time takes on a strange quality. It both stretches endlessly and passes unnoticed. My mornings always start the same way. 6:30 in the morning, the creak of old floorboards underfoot, the familiar ache in my knees, and the loneliness that stretches across every room of Helena's in my house. 73 years is a long time. Enough to realize a simple truth. A house without a loved one becomes just walls and a roof. My name is Gilbert Proud. It's been 3 years since I've lived alone in our house in Northport. Helena left quietly in her sleep, leaving me alone with memories and old frame photographs. 47 years of marriage, and now I'm talking to her portrait over morning tea, talking about the weather, the fact that neighbor Burke has put his car too close to our driveway again, and that the corner store has closed. "It's going to rain today, Helena." "My knees are aching more than usual," I mumble, looking up at the frowning morning sky. No answer, just the ticking of the old clock and the sound of the wind outside the window. I've gotten used to the silence, though at times the silence is deafening. Our house is my fortress and my curse at the same time. A two-story building with a veranda and a small garden where Helena grew roses and hydrangeas. I continue to tend them, though my old hands aren't as nimble as they used to be. I was an urban architect, designing buildings all my life, and now my universe has narrowed to these walls, a few neighborhood streets, and weekly trips to the supermarket. I have a son, Ashton. He's 43, married to Rosamond for 15 years. They have no children. They used to visit me on big holidays, calling once a week, a formality that is done out of a sense of duty. Ashton works as an insurance appraiser, Rosamond as a landscaper. They live 40 minutes away from me in a more upscale Northport neighborhood. Our relationship has always been cool. After Helena's death, they became even more strained. Ashton had never been close to me. I worked hard when he was growing up, and then he chose his own path, different from what I had planned for him. I wanted him to continue my work in architecture, but he wasn't interested. Misunderstanding turned to alienation and then to polite coldness. "It's strange, Helena," I say to the portrait of my wife, dusting off the frame. "Ashton called yesterday for the second time this week, asked how my blood pressure was, if I was taking my meds." I chuckle, remembering that conversation. Over the past month, my son has become unusually concerned about my health. Before, my complaints about my arthritis or my blood pressure would only irritate him. "Dad, are you talking about sickness again? Take a pill and don't think about it." And now the detailed questioning, the recommendations of the doctors he supposedly consulted about me. After breakfast, I go for a walk. I walk slowly down familiar streets, saying hello to neighbors, many of whom I've known for decades. Northport is a small town where everyone knows each other. I remember designing the new school building, expanding the downtown park, fighting the city council to preserve the historic buildings downtown. Now I'm just one of the old folks walking slowly down the sidewalk with a cane in my hand. At home, I go about my daily chores, cooking a simple dinner, reading, sometimes watching TV. After lunch, Rosamond calls. It's become almost a daily ritual. "Gilbert, how are you today?" Her voice sounds lusciously solicitous. "Ashton is worried about you living alone in such a big house. Maybe we could come over this weekend, help with the cleaning." "Thank you, Rosamond, but I can manage." "The cleaning lady comes on Wednesdays," I reply, even though there is no cleaning lady. I just don't want their visit. "And how's your heart? Are you taking those new pills Dr. Morris prescribed?" I raise my eyebrows in surprise. I haven't seen Dr. Morris in 6 months, and he hasn't prescribed any new pills. "It's okay, Rosamond. There's no need to worry." "Oh, Gilbert, Ashton and I are so worried about you. At your age, living alone." She makes a dramatic pause. "By the way, have you thought about updating your will?" "Ashton said the last time you drafted one was when Helena was still alive." "That's it. The will." I exhale slowly, feeling the muscles in my back tense. "The will is fine, Rosamond. Nothing to worry about." "Of course it is. I was just thinking. It's been such a long time. By the way, we're coming up on Saturday. Ashton wants to check the roof. I think there's a leak." I don't remember complaining about leaks. The roof was completely replaced only 2 years ago, after Helena died. It was the last major work on the house. After talking to Rosamond, I sit in my chair for a long time, looking out the window. Something's not right. They used to stay away for months, and now the sudden concern, the worry about my health in the house, and this question about the will, old man paranoia or reasonable suspicion. In the evening, Ashton calls. His voice sounds unnaturally cheerful. "Dad, how are you? I heard you talked to Rosamond today. She said you seemed tired." "I'm fine, son. Just a regular day of retirement. Listen, have you thought about moving? This house is so big for one person. And the stairs. At your age, it's dangerous." "I'm fine with stairs, Ashton. And I'm not moving anywhere." "Of course I'm just suggesting it." He pauses. "Dad, have you thought about renewing your health insurance? I can help with the paperwork. And also, about your savings. Do you keep your money in the bank or at home? Since when are you interested in my finances? I'm asking you directly. I'm just looking out for you. At your age, you have to think things through. You never know." "Anything?" I repeat. "Do you expect me to die soon, Ashton?" "God, Dad, how can you say that?" His outrage seems fake. "I'm just trying to help." After talking to my son, I go out onto the veranda. The evening air brings the smell of the sea and flowering trees. I sit down in an old rocking chair and close my eyes. Something is happening, and I don't like it. On Saturday, they arrive early in the morning. Rosamond brings a homemade pie and a bunch of groceries, as if I'm incapable of going to the store myself. Ashton immediately goes to check the roof, though I'm pretty sure everything's fine up there. Gilbert, Ashton, and I were thinking, "Maybe you should move in with us," Rosamond says, setting the table. "And we have a guest room on the first floor, so you won't have to climb the stairs." "I'm not going to leave my house, Rosamond." "But it's so sensible," she insists. "You're a lonely old man. What if you get sick? Who's going to help?" "I have a phone and neighbors. Bert comes by every day." "That old man," she snorts. "He's 70 himself." I look at her carefully. She's fussing in the kitchen, rearranging my things like she already owns the place. Ashton comes down from the attic, his face pleased. "Dad, there's a real problem with the roof up there. It needs repair." "What kind of problem?" I ask. "The roof was completely replaced 2 years ago." Poor ventilation. Mold can develop." He's clearly making it up as he goes along. "It's an expensive repair. I'm thinking like $5,000. "I'll check it out," I say, getting up. "No, no." Ashton's blocking my way. "At your age, climbing in attics? I'll call in the experts." Over lunch, they talk about their problems, about how expensive it's gotten, how their house needs repairs, how their investments haven't paid off. I listen, half listening, watching them. Something doesn't add up. "How's your health, Gilbert?" Rosamond suddenly asks. "You look pale." "I feel fine." "Are you taking all your medications? Let me check your medicine cabinet." She gets up and heads for the bathroom cabinet where I keep my medications. I can hear her rearranging things, opening vials. "Gilbert, you're not taking your blood pressure medicine. It's full." "Because I wasn't prescribed it, Rosamond," I reply calmly. She comes back confused. "But Dr. Morris..." "I haven't been to Dr. Morris in 6 months, and he hasn't given me any new medication." She and Ashton look at each other. Something is clearly wrong here. After they leave, I sit in silence for a long time. Scraps of conversations, strange questions, unusual behavior are swirling in my head. I don't want to believe what I'm beginning to suspect. Ashton is my son, my flesh and blood. But the suspicions have already taken root. Next week, their visits become even more frequent. They bring groceries, clean the house, inquire about my health. Rosamond even offers to help sort through the papers, clearly alluding to the will and financial documents. I politely decline. One evening when they leave, I discover that my medicine cabinet has been restocked with new medications I didn't buy. Dr. Morris's name is on the boxes. I scrutinize the instructions. Blood pressure medications and sedatives. Strong doses. I set them aside, not intending to take anything I wasn't prescribed. I don't sleep well that night. I'm plagued by doubts and suspicions. In the morning, I decide I need to be more vigilant. Something is going on with my son and his wife, and I strongly dislike it. But maybe I'm being overly vigilant. Perhaps they are really just taking care of me in my old age. But why now? Why, after 3 years of indifference, suddenly such concern? And these questions about the will, the house, the finances, I can't help but think there's something behind all this. Something not good. I can't shake the suspicion. I wake up in the middle of the night with disturbing thoughts, lie in the dark for a long time, listening to the old house creaking in the wind. I have always prided myself on my rationality. My profession as an architect taught me to think logically, to analyze, to look for hidden defects in structures. Now I'm trying to apply those skills to Ashton and Rosamond's behavior. Outside my window, it's a gray March morning. Heavy clouds hang over Northport, promising rain. I look at the picture of Helena on my bedside table. What would you say about their behavior, dear? You've always had a better understanding of people. There is no answer, just silence and the smell of dust. Helena was always defending Ashton, finding excuses for his actions. He's just busy, Gilbert. He's going through a rough patch. Give him time. And as time went on, nothing changed. I rise slowly, wincing at the pain in my back. 73 years makes itself felt every morning. I go down to the kitchen making tea as usual. The doorbell rings, unexpectedly early in the morning. Rosamond is at the door, unnaturally cheerful, carrying a bag of groceries. Good morning, Gilbert. I thought I'd stop by on my way, bring you some fresh bread and fruit. On my way from where? You live on the opposite side of the street, I remark as I let her into the house. She pauses for a second, then smiles strainedly. Oh, I was just in the neighborhood, meeting a client. Akram, at 7 in the morning? Yeah, he's a very busy man. She walks into the kitchen and starts setting out the groceries. Have you had breakfast yet? Let me make you something. How's your sleep? Are you taking those pills we brought? No, Rosamond. I don't take any medicine that my doctor hasn't prescribed. She freezes, then turns around with an unnaturally bright smile. But Gilbert, Ashton spoke to Dr. Morris, he said. I'll talk to Dr. Morris myself, I interrupt. Shan't. In fact, I've already made an appointment with him for tomorrow. It's a lie, but I want to check her reaction. She pales. Oh, that's wonderful. Would you like me to drive you? Oh, that's okay, I can manage. Rosamond is nervous, it's obvious. Her fingers are fiddling with the hem of her blouse, her gaze avoiding mine. Please, Gilbert, let Ashton and I help you. At your age, going to doctors alone. At my age, Rosamond, I'm still quite capable of taking care of myself, I say firmly. Now, if you don't mind, I have plans for the morning. She leaves, clearly upset, and I stay in the kitchen pondering the situation. Why are they so insistent on me taking this medication? Why this constant questioning about my health and will? After lunch, Ashton calls. Dad, Rosamond said you're going to see Dr. Morris tomorrow? Yes, I want to check on those medications you brought me. I answer calmly. Maybe I'll just ask him and give it to you. You won't have to leave the house. I prefer to talk to him in person. Okay. Listen, what about those documents Rosamond was talking about? The will and everything. What documents, Ashton? Well, just in case. I sigh. All the papers are fine. Don't worry about it. That evening, I call my longtime friend Warren Pitt. We've known each other for 50 years, worked on many projects together. He was the only one who continued to visit me regularly after Helena's death. Warren, could you come by tomorrow? I need some advice. The next day, Warren arrives close to noon. Despite his 76 years, he still drives and looks more alert than I do. You look lousy, Gilbert, he says, settling into a chair in the living room. Thanks for the compliment. What's going on? You sounded worried on the phone. I tell him about Ashton and Rosamond's strange behavior, about the questions about the will, about the medication they insist I take. Do you think they're up to something? Warren asks when I finish. I don't want to believe it, but yeah, I have that suspicion. Have you checked those meds? Not yet. I was wondering if you knew a good pharmacist you could trust. Warren drummed his fingers on the armrest thoughtfully. My niece Laurel works at the hospital pharmacy. I think she might be able to help. That's when my phone rings. It's Ashton. I'm sending the call to voicemail. You don't want to talk to your son? Warren wonders. Not right now. Too many questions. Warren leaves, promising to get in touch with his niece. I walk him to the door, and then I notice Ashton's car parked a block away. My son is sitting behind the wheel, talking on the phone without noticing me. Curiosity takes over. I walk slowly down the street, trying to look like a normal, elderly person on a walk. I get closer to the car, hiding behind a hedge. Ashton is talking emotionally, the window ajar, and I can hear him say, "Rosamond, he refuses to take his medication. How are we going to convince the bank to extend the deadline if he's going to live another 5 years?" I freeze, not believing my ears. A chill runs down my spine. "No, I'm not suggesting anything radical," Ashton continues. I just need to convince him to sign a new will and take his meds. Dr. Morris said that at his age, with his blood pressure, a stroke could happen at any time. We just need to speed up the natural process." A pause, then he replies irritably, "Yes, I know the loan has to be paid off. You think I don't remember that we mortgaged the house? But if my father leaves us his house, we can sell it and pay off the debt. A house in a neighborhood like this is worth at least $400,000. I step back, feeling the ground slipping from under my feet. So here's the deal. They're waiting for me to die so they can get the house and pay off the debt. Somehow I get home, lock the door, and sit in a chair, trying to make sense of what I've heard. My own son discussing how to speed up the natural process. Those meds, are they really for blood pressure or something more dangerous? The phone rings. It's Ashton again. I drop the call and mute it. Not now. I can't talk to him without giving away what I know. In the evening, Warren arrives with his niece Laurel. She is a young woman with intelligent eyes and a determined expression. "Uncle Warren has told me about your situation, Mr. Proud. It's a serious matter. May I see the medication?" I show her the vials Ashton and Rosamond have brought. Laurel scrutinizes them, checking them against some data on her phone. "These meds are really for blood pressure, but the dosage is, it's very high for someone of your age and weight. If you were to take it regularly, your blood pressure could drop critically, leading to dizziness, falls, and a possible stroke." "And a possible stroke?" I ask. She nods. "Worst case scenario, yes." "Who prescribed them?" "Dr. Morris, supposedly. But I haven't seen him in 6 months. I can verify that. I have access to the prescription database." Laurel types something into her phone, frowns. "No, doctor. Morris did not prescribe these drugs in your name. His last prescription was dated last September, and it was for painkillers." Warren and I look at each other. So Ashton lied. Those meds weren't officially prescribed to me. "What am I supposed to do?" I ask, feeling the fatigue creep up on me. "First of all, don't take those pills," Laurel replies. "And maybe go to the police." "This is my son," I say quietly. "I can't." "Gilbert," Warren interrupts me. "If what you overheard is true, they're planning to hurt you. This is serious. After Warren and Laurel leave, I can't sleep." I toss and turn in bed, replaying the conversation I overheard in my head. Accelerate the natural process. My own son talked about my death as a solution to his financial problems. In the morning, I make a decision. I call my old acquaintance, attorney Samuel Crow. "Samuel, I need your help, and complete confidentiality." We meet at his office downtown. Samuel's almost my age, but he's still practicing. I tell him everything about Ashton and Rosamond's strange behavior, about the overheard conversation, about the medication. "Do you realize what you're accusing them of?" he asks seriously. "Yes, but I have no proof, only suspicion and overheard conversation." Samuel taps his pen on the table thoughtfully. "What do you want to do?" "Change the will and find out if they really mortgaged their house and took out a loan. The first I can arrange immediately. The second is more difficult, but I have a friend at the bank who could check without violating confidentiality laws. We're making a new will. Now the house and most of my savings will go to charity, to the foundation for young architects that Helena and I set up many years ago. I leave only a small amount to Ashton, enough not to contest the will, but nothing compared to the value of the house. 3 days later, Samuel calls me. "Gilbert, I have information." You were right. Ashton and Rosamond took out a loan of $250,000 8 months ago, mortgaging their house. It's due in 5 years, but they've already missed payments twice. What did they spend that kind of money on? That's what my source doesn't know. But he said they requested another loan a month ago and were turned down because of high debt. I thank him and hang up. I sit back in my chair, trying to digest the information. So they really are in desperate financial straits and are counting on getting my house to solve their problems. At that moment, the doorbell rings. I slowly go to open it. On the doorstep are Ashton and Rosamond, both with strange smiles. "Dad," Ashton hugs me. "We called you all day yesterday." We were worried. Ashton tries to keep his tone casual. "Just looking out for you, Dad. At your age, it's important that everything be in order." "At my age," I repeat slowly, "it's important to know who you can trust." There is an awkward silence. Then Rosamond suddenly remembers the important meeting, and they leave in a hurry. I stare after them, feeling a mixture of bitterness and determination. The next day, I contact Wendy Holm, a realtor. She's been in real estate in Northport for over 20 years and helped me with the purchase of the land for Helena's studio. "Gilbert, what a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you?" "Wendy, I'd like to sell the house," quickly and quietly. "That's news to me. Are you sure about this? This house?" "I'm absolutely sure," I interrupted. "And there's one more condition. Ashton can't find out about it. No one can. Not until the deal is finalized." Wendy is silent for a moment, then cautiously asks, "Gilbert, are you all right? That sounds unusual." "I'm fine, Wendy. It's just family emergency." She doesn't ask again, which I'm grateful for. We make an appointment to meet the next day to discuss the details. In the evening, I sit in my office sorting through old blueprints and photographs. So many memories are tied to this house. This is where Helena and I spent most of our lives, where Ashton grew up, where there were happy moments and bitter losses, and now I am preparing to leave it, not of my own free will, but because of the betrayal of those closest to me. Bitterness fills me, but with it comes determination. I will not let them use me. I won't let them play with my life for their financial problems. I look at Helena's picture. "You know, darling, I never thought I'd make this decision, but I have no choice." I carefully gather evidence of their intentions. Taped conversations, wrong dosage medication, information about their financial problems. It all goes into a large envelope, which I stow in the safe. There will come a time when I hand them that envelope, and they will know that I knew everything. In the meantime, I begin to prepare for a new chapter of my life. A life without the house I loved, but also without the fear of my own family. Wendy has already found a potential buyer, and the selling process is well underway. Things are about to change, and I'm ready for it. The process of selling the house has been more complicated than I expected. So many little things, details, paperwork. Wendy deserves all the credit for how tactfully and professionally she handled the case. Not once did she blab about the sale or bring in potential buyers when Ashton might have noticed. "I've found the perfect buyer, Gilbert," Wendy informed me a week after our conversation. "He's willing to pay full price and doesn't require lengthy inspections." "Who is it?" I asked, intrigued by this promptness. "Eugene Randall. You should know him. He used to work in the city administration." I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Of course I knew Eugene. We'd collaborated on several projects when I was still active as a city architect. He was 10 years younger than me, but already retired. "Eugene? I didn't realize he was looking for a house in our neighborhood." "Oh, he's been looking at properties here for a while. He always liked your house," Wendy smiled. "I called him as soon as you approached me. He agreed almost immediately. That made things easier." I trusted Eugene, and the thought of my house going to a man who appreciated its architecture and history was comforting. We met Eugene in Wendy's office. He hadn't changed much since the last time we'd seen him. Same intelligent eyes, neat gray beard, calm movements. "Gilbert," he shook my hand firmly, "I didn't expect you to decide to sell the house. Circumstances have changed, Eugene." He looked at me carefully but didn't question me in front of Wendy. We discussed the terms of the deal, the price, the timing. Eugene didn't haggle, accepting the amount without objection. After the meeting, he offered to have coffee. In a small coffee shop on the corner, away from prying eyes, I told him the truth about Ashton and Rosamond's strange behavior, about the overheard conversation, about the drugs. "God, Gilbert," Eugene shook his head, That's terrible. Have you gone to the police? No, it's my son, Eugene. I can't. I understand. He squeezed my shoulder. What do you plan to do after you sell the house? Buy a small apartment. I don't need much. Echo, if you want, you can stay in the house for a while after the deal is done. I'm in no hurry. I smiled gratefully. Thank you, but it's better to do it quickly. I don't want to drag it out. The next 2 weeks passed in anxious anticipation. Ashton and Rosamond continued their visits, even more insistent than before. Now they came almost every day, bringing food, medicine, offering to help around the house. Dad, have you changed your mind about moving in with us? Ashton asked with feigned concern. You'd be much more comfortable here. No, Ashton, I'm staying in my house. Every time I said that phrase, I felt a bitter irony. My house, which is hardly mine anymore. Rosamond became particularly obsessive. She went through my things, helping with the cleaning, looking in my desk drawers, checking my mail. Gilbert, these bills. Do you need help paying them? No, Rosamond, I manage on my own. One day I found her in my office going through files. So what are you doing? I asked her sharply. She flinched and smiled guiltily. Oh, just helping to organize. You have so many papers. These are my personal papers, Rosamond. Please don't touch them. From then on, I started locking my office with a key and always carried it with me. As time went on, the sale of the house was nearing completion. Eugene had arranged the mortgage, all the inspections were passed, and the paperwork was prepared. Wendy said we could close the deal in the next few days. Meanwhile, I was preparing for a confrontation with my son and daughter-in-law. In a large envelope, I gathered all the evidence of their plan, printouts of their credit information, photos of medications with incorrect dosages, recordings of their confessions made on a tape recorder during their visits when they didn't realize I was recording. It won't be easy, Helena, I said, looking at the picture of my wife, but I have to do it. Ashton and Rosamond became more and more persistent in their attempts to find out about my will. On their last visit, Ashton even offered to help me update it. I know a notary public, Dad. He can come right here. You don't even have to leave the house. You don't have to worry, I replied coldly. My will is in perfect order. But you won't tell us what's in it, Rosamond almost shouted, losing her temper. Ashton gave her a warning glance, and she immediately softened her tone. I mean, we just want to be sure it's all accounted for. It's all accounted for, Rosamond. Don't worry. That evening, Wendy called with good news. All the paperwork is ready, Gilbert. We can close the deal tomorrow. That's great. The sooner the better. I have to warn you, as soon as we register the sale, the information will become public. Your son could find out. I know he will. I'll be ready by then. The next day we met at the notary's office. Me, Eugene, Wendy, and lawyer Samuel. The papers were signed. The money was transferred to my account. The house was officially in Eugene Randall's possession. Congratulations on the purchase, I said, shaking his hand. And congratulations on the sale, he said seriously. Remember, you can stay there as long as you need to. Thanks, but I've already found an apartment. I'll move in a couple days. On the way home, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, and an anxious anticipation of an inevitable confrontation. The house I'd lived in most of my life now belonged to someone else, but there was no choice. Better that than to be victimized by my own son. In the evening, I sat in the living room, looking through old photo albums. So many memories these walls held. Ashton's first steps, birthdays, holidays, quiet evenings with Helena. Now it was all in the past. The phone rang around 11 o'clock at night. It was Wendy. Gilbert, sorry to call you so late. I just wanted to confirm that all the paperwork is officially registered. The deal is completely finalized. Thank you, Wendy, and thanks for everything you've done. You're welcome. If you need any help with the new apartment, I'll let you know. We said our goodbyes and I put the phone on the table. At that moment, there was the sound of the door opening. I tensed. The door was locked. Who else would have keys? Then I remembered Ashton still had the spare key we'd given him years ago. Gilbert, Rosamond's voice came from the hallway. We came to check on you. Ashton thought you might need some help. Their late unannounced visit was unusual, even for their new obsessive behavior. I rose slowly from my chair and walked out into the hallway. It's late for visits, I said dryly. Ashton was standing next to Rosamond, both with strained smiles. We were worried, Dad. You haven't answered your phone all day. I've been busy. Rosamond walked into the living room, looking around with ill-concealed interest. What have you been busy with, Gilbert? I didn't answer, following them into the room. My phone was still on the table, screen up. At that moment, a text from Wendy came in, and the screen lit up. Congratulations again on the successful sale of the house. The money is due. Rosamond, who was standing closer to the table, saw the message. Her eyes widened, and she grabbed the phone and read it in full before I could react. What does it mean? Her voice trailed off into a scream. The sale of the house? What sale? Ashton rushed over to her, snatching the phone and reading the message too. His face went pale, then red with anger. What have you done? He shouted. You sold the house? How could you? I stared at them in silence, watching their plan crumble before my eyes. You had no right, Ashton continued to yell. This is our family home. How dare you make this decision without us? Who gave you permission to sell the house? Rosamond echoed him, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. You can't just sell it. It's illegal. Her screaming must have woken half the neighbors. It was almost 3 a.m. The house belonged to me, I said calmly. I had every right to sell it. No! Ashton jumped up, his face contorted with rage. How dare you? Who gave you permission? I silently went to the secretary, pulled out a large envelope and handed it to my son. He snatched the envelope out of my hands, broke the seal and shook the contents onto the table. There was silence. Ashton and Rosamond stared at the documents spread out in front of them. The bank statements about their loan, the pictures of the drugs, the printouts of the forensics showing the wrong dosage, the recordings of their conversations. What? What is it? Ashton muttered, flipping through the papers. Evidence, I answered in a steady voice. Proof of your plan. Rosamond grabbed one of the printouts and paled as she recognized her own message to Ashton. He refuses to take his medication. What are we going to do? The bank is demanding payment, and we were counting on an inheritance. It's not what you think, she began, but her voice trembled. It isn't. I picked up another document. And this one? A stroke can happen at any time. We just need to speed up the natural process. Your words, Ashton. I heard the whole conversation when you were in the car. My son froze. His face turned white. Were you following us? No, I just happened to be passing by. But what I heard was enough. Rosamond was poring over papers, her hands trembling. This is our loan information. It's confidential. How did you? I have friends, Rosamond. Real friends who helped me find out the truth. Ashton slumped in his chair. His shoulders slumped. Dad, you've got it all wrong. We never. No more lies. I raised my voice for the first time in the entire conversation. You planned my death so you could get the house and pay off your debts. You gave me overdose medication that could cause a stroke. You waited for me to die so you could take everything I had. A silence, heavy and oppressive, hung in the room. Then Rosamond burst into tears. We were desperate. You don't understand. Creditors were threatening to foreclose on our house. We could be on the street. And the solution was my death? I asked, feeling the bitterness rising to my throat. Your father, Ashton. You chose my life over your financial problems. Ashton looked up, his eyes a mixture of shame and stubbornness. You were always selfish, Dad. Always thinking only of yourself. When Mom was alive, at least you held back. But after she died, don't you dare bring your mother into this. My voice trembled. Helena would never approve of what you're doing. Rosamond had stopped crying and was now looking at the deed to the house. Who did you sell it to? How much? Even now, they were only interested in the money. It's none of your business, I replied. The money from the sale has already been transferred to my account, and you won't get a dime. You can't do that, Ashton shouted, jumping up. It's an inheritance. Our money. Our money? I raised an eyebrow. I earned every dollar invested in this house. I designed it, built it, paid the mortgage for 30 years. It was my house, and I used it as I saw fit. We're going to contest the sale, Rosamond blurted out. You're an old man with dementia. You didn't know what you were doing. I grinned. Try. All the documents are legally flawless. My lawyer and notary have attested to my sanity. But this evidence of your intentions, I pointed to the scattered papers, may be of interest to the police, attempting to give a man a stroke with the wrong dosage of medication. How does that qualify, Ashton? Attempted murder? They froze, realizing the gravity of the situation. You're bluffing, Ashton finally said. You're not going to the police. You're not airing the family's dirty laundry. Check me out, I looked him straight in the eye. I have nothing left to lose. Rosamond burst into tears again, louder this time. What are we going to do now? The bank will take our house. We'll end up on the street. That's your problem, I said coldly. You're adults. Find a solution that doesn't involve my death. Ashton gave me a hateful look. You've always been heartless, always putting your principles before your family. Family? I grinned bitterly. What family, Ashton? The one that planned my death for money? My son turned away, unable to find an answer. Rosamond continued to sob, poring over the documents as if hoping to find some loophole in them. You'd better go, I said tiredly. It's late. Where are we going? Rosamond exclaimed. Our house is about to be foreclosed on. Again, this is your problem. Ashton gathered the papers back into the envelope, his movements sharp, angry. You're going to regret this, Dad. I swear you will. Maybe, I replied, feeling not anger but deep sadness. But not as much as I regret raising a son who could want his father dead for money. He jerked as if I'd hit him, then grabbed Rosamond by the arm and dragged her toward the exit. Let's go. There's nothing more to do here. I stood in the doorway, watching them get into the car. Rosamond was still crying, and Ashton slammed the door violently and started the engine. They drove off, leaving me alone in a house that was no longer mine. I walked back into the living room and sank into a chair. There was a picture of Helena on the table, and I picked it up. That's it, darling, I whispered. Now I know the truth, and so do they. Outside the window, it was beginning to lighten. A new day brought a new reality, a life without the home I loved and without the son I turned out not to know at all. After that night's confrontation, I hadn't expected to see Ashton and Rosamond again. I thought they would disappear from my life, hurt by the exposure and the loss of my hopes for an inheritance. But I underestimated their desperation, or perhaps their insolence. They showed up the next day around noon. I was just starting to pack my books, the first step toward moving into the new apartment I'd found with Wendy's help. It was small but cozy, on the first floor of an old house in a quiet Northport neighborhood, far enough away from where Ashton lived that we wouldn't run into each other by accident. The doorbell rang, taking me by surprise. When I opened it, I found my son and daughter-in-law on the doorstep, both with weeping, haggard faces, but with a determined expression in their eyes. "Sir, we need to talk," Ashton said without saying hello. I stepped back silently, allowing them to enter. Well, this meeting had better be now, to end it once and for all. They made their way into the living room, where they noticed boxes of books. "Are you getting ready?" Rosamond asked with a note of panic in her voice. "So soon?" "The sooner the better," I replied, sitting down in the chair and pointing them to the couch. "What did you want to talk about?" They looked at each other. It was obvious that they had strategized this conversation beforehand. Ashton coughed. "Dad, we've been thinking all night. What happened was a big misunderstanding. You've got it all wrong." I raised my eyebrow questioningly. "Misunderstood? Misunderstood what?" "Our intentions," Rosamond interjected quickly. "We never meant to harm you. Never. Those drugs, we really thought they would help. Dr. Morris—" "No more lies," I interrupted her quietly. "Dr. Morris didn't prescribe me those medications. I checked." They looked at each other again, now with concern. "There may have been some confusion," Ashton continued uncertainly. "But I swear, Dad, we never wanted you dead. That's a terrible accusation." "I heard your conversation with Rosamond in the car," I reminded him. "How are we going to convince the bank to extend the deadline if he's going to live another 5 years? We just need to speed up the natural process." "Your words, Ashton." My son turned pale, but quickly pulled himself together. "You took phrases out of context. I was talking about speeding up the process of moving you to us, where we could take better care of you." I shook my head. Don't insult my intelligence. I heard the whole conversation. You were counting on getting my house after my death to solve your financial problems. You planned it. Rosamond suddenly burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. You don't understand. We are in a desperate situation. We're in danger of losing our house. The debt collectors are calling every day. The bank is threatening to sue us. Ashton tried to calm her down, throwing angry glances at me as if I was to blame for their problems. Why did you take out such a big loan? I asked bluntly. What did the $250,000 go for? They exchanged glances again, this time guilty. Investment, Ashton finally answered reluctantly. We were offered to invest in a promising project, a guaranteed return of 30% in 6 months. And you believed it? I couldn't hide my surprise. Our friend Pierce was in charge of the project, Rosamond murmured. We trusted him. He showed us all the calculations, plans, schedules. It all looked very convincing. And then he disappeared, Ashton added grimly, along with the investors' money. The police are still looking for him. I sighed. Classic Ponzi scheme, an old-fashioned scam, and my son and daughter-in-law fell for it by mortgaging the house. And instead of honestly admitting your mistake and asking for help, you decided to, what? Wait for me to die? Help it come sooner? No, Rosamond exclaimed. I mean, we were hoping you'd leave the house to Ashton as an inheritance. It's only natural. He's your son. But we never wished you dead. If he lives another 5 years, I quoted again, a strange phrase for someone who hadn't thought about my death. Ashton lowered his head. We were desperate, Dad. You don't know what it's like, the constant fear of losing the roof over your head, debt collectors calling day and night, threats of a lawsuit. We panicked. Yeah, we were thinking about your inheritance. Yes, we needed the money, but that doesn't mean we wanted you dead. And the medication? I asked. The ones that could give me a stroke if I took them regularly? More guilty looks. We just wanted you to be more cooperative, Rosamond whispered. To agree to rewrite your will, to donate the house. I stared at them, unable to believe my ears. They were admitting to deliberately giving me drugs to manipulate my condition, and yet they claimed they meant me no harm. The hypocrisy was so blatant, I couldn't find the words. Dad, please, Ashton looked at me pleadingly. We made a mistake. We admit it. But we're in a desperate situation. Help us. How? I asked coldly. The house has already been sold. Cancel the deal, Rosamond exclaimed. Surely something can be done. Or lend us the money you got from the sale. We'll pay you back, I swear. I shook my head. No, the deal's done. The papers are signed, and I'm not going to give you money after everything you've tried to do to me. You're condemning us to homelessness, Rosamond screamed, jumping up from the couch. Your only son, your family. Family? I grinned bitterly. You stopped being my family the moment you decided my life was an acceptable price to pay for solving your financial problems. Ashton stood up too, his face contorted with anger. You've always been like this. Cold, calculating, putting principles before people. Mom was the only one who made you human. Without her, you turned into an emotionless robot. The mention of Helena hurt me, but I kept my composure. Your mother would have been horrified by what you tried to do. You don't know what she would have said, Ashton shouted. She always protected me from you and your inflated expectations. Elena protected you when you skipped school or got bad grades, I replied quietly. But even she wouldn't justify her son's attempt to get rid of his father for money. Rosamond paced back and forth across the room, wringing her hands. What do we do now? Where do we go? The bank is about to take the house. Sell it yourself, I suggested. Pay off the debt and start over. You're both working, you have an income. It's not a good time to sell on the market, Ashton objected. Why? We'll get less than we owe the bank. Then find another solution, I said. But don't count on my help. You have crossed a line beyond which I cannot forgive you. Rosamond sobbed again, louder this time. Ashton put his arm around her shoulders, glaring angrily at me. You're going to regret this, Dad. I swear you'll regret it. Threats won't help your situation. I pointed out calmly. It's not a threat, Ashton said through gritted teeth. It's a warning. You think you've punished us, but really you've only hurt yourself. You'll be alone, without a home, without a family. And by the time you realize the mistake you've made, it'll be too late. I'd rather be alone with people who only see me as a source of money, I replied. They left, slamming the door so hard that the glass in the windows rattled. I was left alone in the silence of the living room, with half-packed books and a heavy heart. It seemed like I should have felt satisfied that I had exposed their plan, protected myself, punished them for their betrayal. But instead, there was only emptiness and bitterness. My family was finally broken, not because of death, not because of misunderstandings, but because of greed and betrayal. I continued packing the books, trying not to think about what had happened. Each of them held a memory. This one Helena had given me for my 30th birthday. This one we'd read together in bed on winter evenings. And this one I'd bought for little Ashton to instill in him a love of architecture. The phone rang, interrupting the painful thoughts. It was Eugene. Gilbert, how are you? I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. As much as possible, I answered tiredly. Does your son know about the sale? Yes, he and his wife just left. How did they react? I sighed. First they denied everything. Then they partially confessed. Then they begged me to give them the money. Then they threatened. The usual gamut of emotions of people whose plans have been ruined. I'm sorry, Gilbert. It's a tough situation. Yes, I agreed. But there's no choice. After talking to Eugene, I went back to packing. By evening, most of the books had been boxed up. I decided to take only the most valuable ones with me, the ones Helena had given me, old photo albums, a few favorite novels. The rest could be left behind. Eugene said he didn't mind if some things stayed in the house. He liked its character, the atmosphere of a settled space. Around 6 p.m., the doorbell rang again. I sighed. Had Ashton and Rosamond returned for another round of accusations and pleading? But on the doorstep stood Warren, my old friend. "Ha ha, I thought I'd stop by and see how you were doing," he said, coming into the house. "Eugene told me the deal's finalized." "Yeah, they signed all the papers yesterday." Warren looked at the boxes in the living room. "Packing? Slowly. I'm moving in 3 days. Need any help?" I smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Warren, but I'll be fine. I don't have that much stuff." We sat in the living room, and I told him about Ashton and Rosamond's visit. I can't believe they were still trying to get away with it." Warren shook his head. "After all the evidence?" "Desperation," I shrugged. "They're in a really tough financial situation." "That they created." "Yes, but people tend to look for external causes of their problems." Warren looked at me carefully. "Do you feel sorry for them after all they've tried to do?" I wondered, did I feel sorry for Ashton? Yes, in a way. He was my son, and somewhere deep inside I still remembered the little boy I'd once held in my arms, whose first steps and words had made Helena and me so happy. "Not that I regret it," I answered at last. "More like regret that we'd come to this, that I failed to instill in him the values I thought were important." "Don't blame yourself, Gilbert," Warren said gravely. "You gave him everything you could. Education, a home, support. That he chose this path was his decision, not yours. Maybe he was right, but the guilt still gnawed at me. Somewhere I'd made a mistake as a father in raising my son to be a man capable of such betrayal." After Warren left, I continued packing. I packed clothes, personal effects, documents. I wrapped Helena's photographs especially carefully in paper. I was going to put them in the most prominent place in the new apartment. Toward nightfall, my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Gilbert Proud speaking. "Mr. Proud, this is Pam Norton from First Commerce Bank. We've been trying to contact your son Ashton Proud and his wife Rosamond about overdue loan payments, but we can't find them. Can you tell us how to contact them?" I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "I saw them this afternoon. They should be home. We've called every number we know and sent an employee to their address. No one is answering. That's strange. Where could they have gone? Did they run away from their creditors?" "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," I replied. "We don't have the closest relationship." After that call, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. What were Ashton and Rosamond up to? running away from their debts. But where? And with what means? The next morning I awoke to a persistent ringing at the door. On the doorstep stood an unfamiliar man in an austere suit. "Mr. Proud, I'm Dennis Welch, a representative from Secure Debt, a collection agency. We're looking for Ashton and Rosamond Proud regarding an overdue loan." "They don't live here," I answered. "I'm their father." "We know that, sir, but we can't find them at their place of residence. Do you have any idea where they might be?" "No, we're not very close," Welch sighed. "I understand. If they contact you, please tell them the situation is serious. The bank is preparing a foreclosure suit." After he left, I dialed Ashton's number, but the phone was off. Same with Rosamond's number. They'd really disappeared. A strange feeling swept over me, a mixture of anxiety and irritation. Despite everything they tried to do, Ashton was still my son, and the thought that he might be in trouble kept me on my toes. I called Samuel, my lawyer. "Samuel, do you know anyone in the police force? My son and his wife are missing, and the creditors are looking for them. I can make inquiries, but if they're just hiding from their debts, the police aren't likely to be actively looking for them." "I understand that. Just, make sure nothing's happened to them." By late afternoon, Samuel called back. "Gilbert, I spoke to Sergeant Mitchell. According to his information, Ashton and Rosamond left town last night. They were spotted at the bus station with suitcases." "So they did run away," I sighed. "It looks like it. Mitchell said it happens a lot when people get into debt." I thanked him and hung up. So Ashton and Rosamond decided to run away from problems instead of solving them. Typical of them, looking for easy ways, shifting responsibility to others. The next morning I continued packing. I had to finish packing, organize the transportation of things to the new apartment. I tried not to think about Ashton and Rosamond, focusing on the upcoming move. When all the boxes were ready, I walked through the house one last time. Every room held memories, both happy and sad. This is where I'd spent most of my life. This was where Helena and I had built our happiness, raised our son, dreamed of the future, and now I was leaving it all behind. I stayed in the bedroom the longest. This is where Helena died, quietly in her sleep. I remember that morning, waking up, turning to kiss her, and realizing she was no longer breathing. Peaceful face, like she was just sound asleep. I sat next to her for a long time then, holding her hand, unable to believe she was gone. "Goodbye, Helena," I whispered, looking at the empty bed. "I loved you here, and I'll love you where I'm going." The hallway was filled with packed boxes and suitcases, everything I had decided to take with me. Not much for a man who had lived 73 years. Books, clothes, photos, a few memorabilia. Everything else was still in the house, passing to the new owner along with the walls and roof. I hailed a cab, loaded my things, looked back at the house one last time. Strangely, I didn't feel the sadness I'd expected. It was more like relief that it was over, that I had made a decision and was following it, that I no longer had to be afraid of my own children and their plans. As I closed the door, I thought about Ashton and Rosamond. Where would they go? What will they do? The creditors would find them sooner or later. It's hard to really disappear these days. And then what? New debts? New schemes? New victims of their machinations? I couldn't help them. Not after what they were trying to do. The only thing I could do was leave them alone with the consequences of their actions, hoping they would learn a lesson from this story. The cab touched down, taking me away to a new home and a new life. I didn't look back. What was gone. Now I had to learn to move on. Alone in a small apartment, without family but without fear. And maybe that wasn't the worst option for someone my age. My new apartment was on the first floor of a 3-story building on the east side of Northport. It was a quiet neighborhood of mostly low-rise 19th century buildings. I'd worked on restoring a few of them in my youth, and now had the strange feeling of coming back here as a resident. The apartment was smaller than I had expected, just 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a small bathroom. The space seemed cramped after the spacious 2-story house, but I tried not to get discouraged. After all, I didn't need much space on my own, and the place had its charms: high ceilings with moldings, antique wooden floors, large windows overlooking a quiet courtyard with a sprawling old oak tree. I spent the first day unpacking and trying to create some semblance of order. I arranged the books on the shelves, hung the clothes in the closet, put Helena's picture on the bedside table almost exactly as it had been in the old house. "Here we are, darling, in a new place," I said, looking at her smiling face. "It's not what we're used to, but it's livable." There was no answer, of course, but I like to think that she was somewhere close by, watching me and approving my decisions. That evening, Eugene called. "How are you settling in, Gilbert?" "Slowly. It's small, but it's clean and bright. I'll get used to it." "Anything you need, just let me know." "Thanks, Eugene. How's the house? You moved in yet?" Not quite. I'm doing a little remodeling before I move my stuff in. By the way, I found a box of old blueprints in the attic. Looks like some of your early designs. You want me to bring it over?" "I've been thinking. These drawings are part of my life, my career. But was it worth clinging to the past? No, keep it. Maybe they'll come in handy when you decide to make some changes to the design." "Are you sure? There's some personal stuff in there too. Some old diaries, letters." "Letters. Must be correspondence with Helena when I was away on business. We both liked to write by hand, even when email and messengers came along." "Okay, I'll take the letters. The rest you can throw away or keep." The next day I decided to explore the neighborhood. An elderly man with a cane walking slowly on the sidewalk. A typical senior citizen, of which there are many in the neighborhood. I noticed a small bakery on the corner, a library 2 blocks away, a cozy square with benches and chess tables where old people like me gathered. "New?" A gray-haired man with a neat beard asked me when I sat down on a bench next to the chess players. "Haven't seen you here before." "Yeah, I moved in yesterday. Gilbert Proud." I held out my hand. "Roger Lomax," he shook my hand firmly. "I'm an old-timer. Been here for 40 years. We got to talking. Roger was a former history teacher who had retired 10 years ago. He told me about the neighborhood, the neighbors, the best stores and cafes nearby. "What did you do before you retired?" he asked. "I was a city architect, worked on a lot of buildings in Northport." "An architect," Roger perked up. "My wife Priscilla loves architecture. She'll be thrilled to meet you. You must come to our house for dinner." So, out of the blue, I received my first invitation to visit in a new place, and I accepted, though I had usually shunned social gatherings since Helena's death. When I got back to the apartment, I found a message on the answering machine of my home phone. Yes, I still had a landline, a habit of an old man unwilling to fully submit to modern technology. "Gilbert, it's Wendy. Please call me back as soon as you can. I have an important conversation to have." I dialed her number, slightly alarmed by the serious tone. "Wendy, it's Gilbert. You left a message." "Gilbert, I'm glad you called me back. Listen, here's the thing. Your son showed up. I'm tense." "Ashton? Where?" "Here in Northport. He came by my agency this morning. He asked about the sale of your house, demanded to see the deed, claimed you were incapacitated during the transaction." I sighed. So Ashton didn't run away for good. He's back, and now he's trying to contest the sale. Samawam. What did you tell him? That all the paperwork was in order, the deal was legitimate, and you were notarized. He wasn't happy. Gilbert, he said terrible things about you, claimed that you had dementia, that you didn't know what you were doing. "I expected something like that," I said tiredly. "Thanks for the warning." "That's not all. He says he's suing to challenge the deal. He's spreading these rumors about your health all over town. So that's it. Ashton's going to go down this road, tarnish my reputation, try to prove I'm incompetent, and use that to challenge the sale of the house. Predictable, but no less unpleasant." "Gilbert, are you there?" Wendy's voice brought me back to the conversation. "Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been thinking." "What are you going to do?" "Nothing yet. Let him sue. I have all the evidence I need to prove his true intentions." After I talked to Wendy, I sat in my chair looking out the window at the old oak tree in the yard. Its gnarled branches looked like hands reaching up to the sky in mute supplication. How much he must have seen in his long life. Births, deaths, joys, tragedies. And now he witnessed another unhappy story. Mine. There was a knock at the door, interrupting my musings. A middle-aged man in an austere suit stood on the doorstep. "Mr. Gilbert Proud?" he asked in a formal tone. Yes, that's me. My name is Curtis Patterson, and I represent the law firm of Patterson and Gold. This is a summons to appear in court as a defendant in a case to invalidate a real estate sale. He handed me an envelope with official stamps. I took it, feeling cold inside. So, Ashton had indeed filed a lawsuit. The hearing date is on the docket. Good day, sir. Curtis Patterson left, and I was left holding the summons. Opening the envelope, I ran my eyes over the text. This suit is brought in the name of Ashton Proud. The grounds are that the seller was incapacitated at the time of the transaction due to age-related mental changes. The hearing date is in 2 weeks. I called Samuel immediately. I'm in trouble, old friend. Ashton's suing. Samuel listened, then said firmly, Don't worry, Gilbert. We're in a strong position. All the paperwork is impeccable. Your sanity has been confirmed not only by a notary, but also by a doctor. Remember, you were examined before the deal? Plus, we have proof of Ashton's true motives. But the rumors, he's spreading rumors about me all over town. Rumors are unpleasant, but not deadly. People who know you won't believe it. And the rest of us. Who cares what strangers think? He was right, of course. But it still hurt to realize that my own son was defaming my name, making me look like an old man out of his mind. For the next few days, I tried not to leave the house unless I had to, afraid of the stares, the whispers behind my back. Northport is a small town, and rumors travel fast. How many people have heard about poor old Proud with dementia? On the 4th day, the phone rang. I picked up the phone, expecting to hear Samuel's voice or Wendy's, but it was a woman I didn't immediately recognize. Uncle Gilbert, it's Moira. Moira Proud Keats, your brother Albert's daughter. I was surprised. Moira is a niece of mine I haven't seen in 10 years. Since Albert's death 5 years ago, we'd barely spoken. Moira, what a surprise. How are you? I'm fine, Uncle Gilbert, but that's not why I'm calling. I've heard, rumors about you and Ashton. I sighed. And you believe them? Of course I didn't. She exclaimed with such indignation that I was ashamed of my suspicions. I have known you all my life, Uncle Gilbert. You've always been the most sensible man in our family. All this talk of dementia is nonsense. Her words warmed my heart. Family isn't all betrayal and disappointment. Sometimes it's support when you least expect it. Thank you, Moira. It means a lot to me. I'll be in Northport next week. I want to see you and support you at the trial. You don't have to. I do, she interrupted firmly. You've always been there for me, Uncle Gilbert. Remember when Dad was against my marriage to Derek? You were the only one who stood up for me. Now it's my turn to support you. After I talked to Moira, I felt energized. She was right. I'm not alone. I have people who know the real me, not a caricature created by Ashton. The next day I decided to go for a walk after all. No more hiding. I hadn't done anything wrong and I wasn't going to let my son corner me. In the square I met Roger Lomax again. He waved me over to his table where he was playing chess with another old man. Gilbert, I thought you'd left. Haven't seen you in days. I've been busy, I said evasively, sitting down next to him. This is Harvey Bishop, my old chess rival. Roger introduced his partner, a gray-haired man with a sly look. Nice to meet you, Harvey said, shaking my hand. So you're the Gilbert Proud, the city architect? I nodded, preparing myself for an unpleasant conversation. Surely he'd heard the rumors by now. My daughter worked at City Hall when you were chief architect, Harvey continued. Fiona Bishop, you might remember. She always said you were the most principled and intelligent person in the administration. Fiona, of course I remember. Talented girl, great at town planning. We talked about the old days, the projects I worked on, the people I worked with. Neither Roger nor Harvey mentioned a word about the rumors or the trial. Either they hadn't heard of them or didn't care. As I was about to leave, Roger suddenly said, By the way, Gilbert, don't forget about dinner on Saturday. Priscilla will be very happy to meet a real architect. I'll try to be there, I promised, though in my heart I doubted it was a good idea. What if Roger had heard the rumors by then? Would he want to see a senile old man out of his mind in his house? When I got home, I found another message on my answering machine. Gilbert, this is Lindsay Henderson. Remember me? I was an assistant in your department years ago. I heard about what's going on and I want to help. Can you call me back, please? Lindsay Henderson. Of course I remembered her. A young, energetic girl who worked with me in my last years before retiring. She must be in her late 50s now. I called her back and we talked for a long time. Lindsay was now head of the architectural department at City Hall, taking over after my successor left. Gilbert, the whole department is outraged by these rumors, she said. We all know you as a brilliant professional and a decent person. No one believes this dementia nonsense. Thank you, Lindsay. This is important to me. We're prepared to testify in court if necessary. Everyone who's worked with you will attest to your sanity and sanity. I was touched. So many people willing to support me, to be on my side, people I haven't spoken to in years, but who have kept a good memory of me. On Saturday, I did go to Roger and Priscilla Lomax's house for dinner. Their house turned out to be a cozy two-story Victorian-style mansion with a manicured garden and a grape-covered veranda. Priscilla, an energetic woman with short gray hair and lively eyes, greeted me with genuine enthusiasm. Gilbert, I finally met a legendary architect. Roger has told me so much about you. I'm afraid your husband exaggerates what I've done. Not at all. I'm an architectural historian, albeit an amateur. Your revitalization of Northport's historic center is a model of heritage preservation. At dinner, besides the three of us, there were several other people present, neighbors of the Lomaxes, all about my age. The conversation was lively, interesting, without a hint of the condescension with which the elderly are often treated. At one point, Priscilla said, Gilbert, we've heard about your son's situation. I want you to know that none of us believe those rumors. I froze, not knowing what to say. They knew, and they invited me anyway? Sistermon. Roger is friends with Judge Holland, who will be handling your case, Priscilla continued. She's a very experienced and fair lawyer. Don't worry, the truth will prevail. Thank you, was all I could squeeze out, touched by their support. After dinner, Roger shook my hand firmly, saying goodbye. Come back anytime, Gilbert, and don't let this story break you. We're all with you. As I drove back home, I thought about how quickly my life had changed. Until a month ago, I was a lonely old man living memories in a big empty house, with a son who came over out of a sense of duty and a daughter-in-law who barely hid her irritation. Now I lived in a small apartment, but a circle of people was forming around me who genuinely cared about me, supported me, offered friendship. Maybe it was all for the best. Maybe this crisis, for all its painfulness, was necessary to bring me out of my voluntary recluse, to bring me back to life among people. The next day, Samuel called. Gilbert, I have news. Good news and bad news. Which one should I start with? Let's start with the bad. Ashton has hired a very aggressive lawyer, Norman Price. He's known for his dirty tricks. Already they're actively spreading rumors about your mental health, looking for witnesses to corroborate their story. I sighed. And the good ones? We've been approached by several people willing to speak in your defense. Your niece. I found information about that friend of Ashton and Rosamond's, Piers, who supposedly ran away with their money. His real name is Pierce Ellington, and he's a known con man specializing in Ponzi investment schemes. He was arrested in Mexico 2 weeks ago. And you know what's interesting? Ashton and Rosamond Proud are listed among his associates. I'm frozen with the pipe in my hand. Associates? So they weren't victims of the fraud as they claimed? They were participants in the scheme? Sampuwain, are you sure, Samuel? Positive. I have a copy of the police report. Ashton and Rosamond attracted investors using their reputation in the city and their connections. They received a percentage of the funds raised. The scheme collapsed when a major investor demanded the money back, and there was nothing to return. Pierce had already spent it all. That explained their desperation, their insistence on getting my house. They weren't just facing bankruptcy, they were facing jail time for accessory to fraud. Would I use this information in court? I asked. Well, if you have to, Samuel replied, but I hope it won't come to that. With our witnesses and evidence, Ashton should realize the pointlessness of the suit and withdraw it. That evening, the doorbell rang. A middle-aged woman, vaguely familiar, stood on the doorstep. Uncle Gilbert, she smiled uncertainly. It's me, Moira. I didn't immediately recognize my niece. The last time I'd seen her had been at Albert's funeral, and she'd looked different then. But now, looking at her features, I could see the resemblance to my brother, the same eyes, the same chin line. Moira! I put my arms around her. Come in, please. You're earlier than you promised. I figured the sooner the better. You're going through a difficult time. We talked for a long time. Moira told me about her life, her husband Derek, with whom she was still happily married, her 2 teenage sons, her work as a school psychologist. I shared my story about Ashton's betrayal, about selling the house, about my new life here. I never understood Ashton, Moira admitted. Even as a child, when we saw each other at family gatherings, he seemed strange, always wanting to be the center of attention, always demanding more than others, always jealous of those who had something better. I couldn't give him a proper upbringing, I sighed. I was too busy working. And Helena, she loved him too much to be strict. Don't blame yourself, Uncle Gilbert. Many children grow up in similar circumstances, but not all become like that. At some point, a person makes his own choices about what kind of person he wants to be. Moira stayed for a few days, staying at a small inn nearby. We spent every day together, walking around the city, having lunch in cafes, just talking. She met Roger and Priscilla, who immediately invited us to another dinner. Gradually, I began to get used to my new life. My small apartment no longer seemed cramped. On the contrary, it was cozy and comfortable. I established a certain daily routine, a morning walk, reading, lunch, and sometimes meetings with new friends. In the evenings, I started sketching. Simple architectural sketches with no specific purpose, just for fun. My hands still remembered the skills, though it wasn't as steady as before. 2 days before the trial, Samuel called with the surprising news. Gilbert, Ashton has withdrawn the suit. What? Why? Apparently, he realized he didn't have a chance, or he'd gotten word that the police were looking into his connection to Pierce Ellington. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. On the one hand, I wouldn't have to go through a humiliating trial. On the other, I wouldn't have the opportunity to publicly clear my name. What about the rumors, I asked? They'll die down eventually, especially when people see that you are quite sane and active. And if the story of the investment scheme gets out, Ashton's reputation will suffer more than yours. That night, Moira, Roger, Priscilla, and I celebrated the news in a little restaurant on the waterfront. It was strange to sit there surrounded by people I barely knew a few weeks ago and feel like I was among friends. Here's to a new chapter in Gilbert Proud's life, Roger raised a toast. To a man who wasn't afraid to start over at 73. Everyone raised their glasses. I looked at their faces, kind, sincere, supportive, and I thought that maybe this new chapter would really be better than the previous one. 6 months flew by. Autumn changed to winter, winter gave way to spring, and Northport was already experiencing the warm days of May. My life in the small apartment had found its rhythm, measured and comfortable. I no longer felt lost or lonely. On the contrary, my social life became more active than it had been during the last years in the old house. My chess games with Roger and Harvey in the park became a daily ritual. On Thursdays, I had dinner at the Lomaxes, where a small group of interesting people, mostly retired like me, but with a wealth of life experience and fascinating stories, often gathered. Priscilla and I discovered a shared passion for 19th century architecture, and our discussions on the subject could last for hours. Moira returned to her home a week after the trial was canceled, but we continued to communicate regularly by phone, and occasionally she would visit for the weekend with her husband and sons. Her eldest son, Niels, a 15-year-old with serious eyes, was showing an interest in architecture, and I began to show him the basics of drafting and design. I saw in him what I had never found in my own son, a genuine respect for my experience and knowledge. I tried not to think about Ashton. After the lawsuit was dropped, he and Rosamond seemed to disappear from my life. Wendy, whom I met occasionally for coffee, told me that their house was for sale, but for well below market value. Apparently, they were in a hurry to pay off their debts. I started working on a small project. I drew sketches for the reconstruction of an old gazebo in the park where I used to play chess. The city administration announced a contest of ideas among the residents. and Roger persuaded me to participate. To my surprise, my project won, and now I regularly consulted with the workers who put my ideas into practice. It was a great feeling to see your drawings turned into real designs again, albeit on such a modest scale. I felt the old professional ambitions awakening in me, the desire to be useful again, to apply the knowledge and experience I had accumulated over decades. One morning in late May, as I was having breakfast on the small balcony of my apartment, enjoying the view of the blooming courtyard, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Gilbert Proud speaking. "Dad?" Ashton's voice sounded uncertain. "It's me." I froze, not knowing what to say. After 6 months of silence, this call took me by surprise. "Dad, are you there?" I could hear the anxiety in his voice. "Yeah, I'm listening." "Yeah, I wanted to talk. Why don't we meet somewhere?" My first impulse was to refuse, but something in his voice, a note of genuine uncertainty, a lack of his usual self-assurance, made me think twice. "Why, Ashton?" I asked bluntly. "A lot has changed in the last 6 months, Dad." "Yeah, I need to talk to you." "Please," I sighed. "Okay, Bluebird Cafe on Maple Street, 2 o'clock. "Thank you." There was relief in his voice. "I'll be there." I hung up the phone and sat for a long time, looking at the apple trees blooming in the yard. Why did Ashton want to meet? What had changed? And most importantly, am I ready for this meeting? After breakfast, I called Roger and told him about my son's call. "Are you sure you want to see him?" an old friend asked. "After everything that's happened?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I think I should at least listen to what he has to say." "Be careful, Gilbert. People rarely change so quickly." At 2 o'clock, I was sitting at a table at the Bluebird, a cozy little cafe overlooking the park. I chose a window seat that gave me a good view of the street. Ashton was running late, and I was starting to think he'd changed his mind when I saw him walking down the sidewalk. He'd changed. Thinner, gaunt, more gray in his hair. His usually immaculate suit had been replaced by a simple shirt and jeans that looked a little worn. He spotted me through the window and smiled nervously before entering. "Hi, Dad," he said, sitting down across from me. "Thanks for agreeing to meet me." "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, wasting no time with the small talk. Ashton lowered his eyes. "A lot has happened since the last time I saw you. Rosamond and we're getting a divorce." I nodded silently, waiting for him to continue. "Everything fell apart after the attempt to contest the sale of the house fell through. We started blaming each other, fighting," he sighed. "And then the truth came out about our involvement in Pierce's scheme. The police began to investigate. Rosamond panicked and made a statement that I had initiated the whole thing, that she was just following my instructions." "And was that true?" I asked. "Partly," Ashton admitted after a pause. "I did bring Pierce into our lives, introduced him to our friends, convinced them to invest. But Rosamond wasn't an innocent victim either. She knew what was going on. The waitress came over to take the order. I asked for tea, Ashton for black coffee. When she stepped away, he continued, "I only avoided jail because I agreed to cooperate and testify against Pierce. But my reputation is ruined. My career is ruined. I was fired from the insurance company as soon as the trouble started. Now I work as a sales clerk at an electronics store, barely making ends meet." "I'm sorry," I said, and it was partly true. Despite everything that had happened, seeing my son in this position was painful. "I'm not looking for pity or money," Ashton added quickly as if he'd read my mind. I wanted to apologize for everything that Rosamond and I had planned, for lying about your health, for trying to contest the sale of the house. It was wrong." I looked at him carefully, trying to see if he was sincere. In 50 years of fatherhood, I'd learned to recognize when Ashton was telling the truth and when he was lying. There was something new in his eyes now, tiredness, humility, and maybe a glimmer of genuine remorse. "What do you want from me, Ashton?" I asked him bluntly. He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I want to start over, re-establish the relationship. I know it sounds ridiculous after everything that's happened, but you're the only family I have left. I've been rethinking a lot of things these past few months. The waitress brought our drinks. I sipped my tea, giving myself time to think. Part of me wanted to believe Ashton, to accept his apology, to repair the broken bond. But the other part, the more rational part, reminded me of the depth of his betrayal, how easily he'd been willing to sacrifice my health and even my life for money. Ashton, I began gently, I appreciate you wanting to apologize, but you have to understand, what you and Rosamond were planning is too serious to just forget and move on. You didn't just lie or deceive me. You were willing to hasten my death for the inheritance. I know, he lowered his head. It's unforgivable. But I swear, Dad, I've changed. That financial meltdown, the divorce, the threat of prison, it's all made me reevaluate my life, my values. Maybe, I said. But do you realize that some things can't be fixed with a simple, I'm sorry? Trust once broken is very hard to rebuild. I'm willing to work on it, Ashton insisted, as long as it takes. I'll prove to you that I've changed. I looked at my son, a grown man with graying hair and the marks of life's trials on his face, and I saw in him not only the man who had betrayed me, but also the little boy whom I had once held in my arms, whose first steps I had welcomed with delight, whose successes I had rejoiced over. But sentimental memories could not outweigh the bitterness of betrayal. I can't promise that we'll ever go back to the way things were, I said at last. Too much water has passed, but I'm not closing the door completely. Time will tell if you've really changed. That was the most I could offer. Not forgiveness, but not a final breakup. Just an acknowledgement of the possibility that someday, maybe we could restore at least a semblance of a normal relationship. Ashton seemed to realize this. He nodded, accepting my terms. Fair enough. I didn't expect much more than that. We finished our drinks in relative silence, exchanging only brief phrases about the weather, the city news. Then Ashton asked, "How are you settling in at your new place? Is the apartment comfortable?" "Yes, quite," I answered. "It's smaller than the house, but it's enough for me alone. And the neighbors are nice. Did you make any new friends?" I could hear the genuine concern in his voice. "Yeah, and a few. I play chess in the park. I'm working on a gazebo renovation project there." "Life goes on, Ashton." He looked surprised. "The gazebo renovation?" "Yeah, my project won the city competition. It's not on the same scale as before, but it's nice to be doing architecture again." That's great, Dad. I'm happy for you." As we were saying goodbye, Ashton held out his hand tentatively. "Can I call you sometimes? Just to see how you're doing?" I hesitated. The wound of betrayal was too deep, his transgression too serious. In the evening, Moira called, "Uncle Gilbert, how was your meeting with Ashton?" "How do you know?" I was surprised. "He called me yesterday, asking how to get in touch with you. I gave him your number. I hope you don't mind." "No, it's fine. The meeting was, complicated. He apologized, said he'd changed, that he wanted to get back together." "And you believed him?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe his remorse is genuine. Life had taken its toll on him over the months. But trust, it's not easy to regain." "I understand," Moira said softly. "Just be careful, okay?" The next day, I told Roger about the meeting as we played chess in the park. He muttered, moving his horse. "And you believed his remorse?" "Not completely," I admitted. "But he seemed sincere. And his life wasn't great now. Divorce, financial problems, working as a salesman instead of a prestigious position in an insurance company. People often feel remorse when they're at rock bottom," Roger said. "The question is whether it remains when things get better." Check, by the way. I absent-mindedly moved the king out from under checkmate. "You're right, of course. That's why I'm in no hurry to forgive him. Time will tell how sincere he is." "Wise decision." Roger made the next move. "You know, I had a similar case with my brother many years ago. He borrowed a large sum of money from me and disappeared for several years. Then he came back, broke and repentant. I forgave him, gave him more money. And you know what? A year later, it happened again." "It's sad," I said. "Yes, but it taught me an important lesson. People are defined not by their words, but by their actions. And not just a single action, but a way of life, habits, character." Roger made a decisive move. Checkmate, by the way. I looked at the board and laughed. Indeed. You've got me, you old fox. Over the next few weeks, Ashton called several times, asking how I was doing, telling me about his life. Our conversations were polite, but superficial. I couldn't bring myself to fully open up to him, and he seemed to understand my limitations and didn't try to overcome them. One day he asked if he could come visit to see my new apartment. I hesitated, but then agreed. Perhaps this visit would give me a better understanding of his current condition. Ashton arrived at the appointed time with a small gift, a book on architectural history, which he remembered I had always been interested in. It was a thoughtful gesture, not an empty formality. "It's cozy here," he said, looking around the apartment. "Smaller than the old house, but very homey." "Yes, I like it," I replied. "Everything I need is close by, and that's all I need." We drank tea on the balcony, talking about neutral topics, the weather, my gazebo project, his new job. Ashton, if she were alive, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe, I agreed. Helena always saw the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Ashton looked at me, and I saw understanding in his eyes. He knew that last sentence applied to him too. After he left, I thought about our meeting for a long time. Ashton had indeed changed. Calmer, more rational, less selfish. But was it enough to forget the past? To trust him again? A few days later, I discussed this question with Priscilla Lomax during our usual walk in the park. "You know, Gilbert," she said thoughtfully, "there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You can forgive Ashton for your own peace of mind, but that doesn't mean you have to go back to the way things were." "What do you mean by that?" "Forgiveness frees you from anger and resentment. It's an internal act that you need first and foremost for yourself. Reconciliation is about rebuilding relationships, trust, intimacy. It requires effort on both sides and is not always possible or even desirable." Her words made me think. Maybe I was looking for the wrong approach. Maybe instead of deciding if Ashton was worthy of my forgiveness, I should have been focusing on my own release of bitterness and disappointment. That evening, after my conversation with Priscilla, I decided to do something I'd been putting off for weeks. Write a short pamphlet on elder advocacy based on my own experiences. The idea came to me when I heard Harvey tell the story of a neighbor who had been cheated out of his apartment by his children, leaving him destitute. I thought that my experience of facing the same situation could help others. I worked on the booklet for several days, writing down tips for legal protection, signs that relatives had selfish intentions, and contacts of organizations that could help. When the draft was ready, I showed it to Samuel, my lawyer. "Very useful stuff, Gilbert," he said after reading it. "You've covered practically every aspect of the problem. I think it could really help a lot of elderly people in vulnerable situations." "Where do you think it could be distributed?" "In social assistance centers, libraries, nursing homes. I can help with contacts. That's how I got a new goal, to help elderly people like me to protect themselves from unscrupulous relatives. I not only wrote a brochure, but also started holding small informational meetings at the local community center, talking about my experience and giving practical advice. To my surprise, these meetings became popular. People shared their stories, asked questions, and thanked me for the information. I felt needed, useful, a feeling I missed after retirement. One day, while conducting another meeting, I noticed a familiar figure in the back rows. Ashton sat quietly, listening intently to my story about how to recognize the signs of manipulation by loved ones. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw in his gaze a complex mix of emotions, shame, remorse, perhaps even pride in what I was doing now. After the meeting, he came up to me. "It's an important thing, Dad. What you're doing. It's going to help a lot of people." "I hope so," I replied. "How are you doing? How's the programming class?" "It's good. Difficult, but interesting." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You know, listening to you today was like looking in a mirror. I saw all the things I've done wrong, all those warning signs you were talking about. It's, sobering." "Okay, if that's the case," I said, not knowing what else to say. You're never going to forgive me completely, are you?" he asked quietly. I looked at my son for a long moment, weighing my answer. "I don't know, Ashton. Maybe someday, maybe. But not now. The wound is still too fresh." He nodded, accepting my answer. I understand, and I'm not rushing you. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry for what we did, and I'm proud of the way you handled it, how you found a way to turn our betrayal into something useful for others. There was a sincerity in his words that I couldn't deny, and yet I wasn't ready to open my heart fully, to drop the defenses I'd built up over the months. Thank you for your support, I said. It means more to me than you know. We parted peacefully, but without promises of a quick reconciliation. I knew Ashton would continue to call, to visit occasionally to try to repair our relationship, and I wasn't closing that door definitively. But I also knew I would never go back to blind trust, to unconditional fatherly love that ignored all transgressions. My life went on, with new friends, new interests, new purpose. I was no longer a lonely old man living memories in an empty house. I was an active person whose experience and knowledge helped others, whose presence was valued, whose opinion was respected. The betrayal of Ashton and Rosamond, for all its bitterness, was a catalyst for change. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, forced me to start over, to open myself up to new possibilities. And perhaps that was fate's hidden gift, a painful but necessary push to a new chapter of life. Sitting on my balcony in the evening, looking up at the stars over Northport, I thought about the strange twists and turns that had brought me here, about losses and gains, disappointments and discoveries, about how life goes on even after the hardest trials, taking new, unexpected forms. You see, Helena, I said, looking at my wife's picture, life goes on, not as we planned, but it goes on. And in the rustling of the leaves of the old oak tree under my balcony, I could hear her answer, her approval, her love, which remained with me despite all the changes and losses.